Well, welcome to our event for tonight. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Valerie and John for having us here tonight. Let's give them a round of applause for that. Thank you.
First, thank you for being here tonight. John and I, when we first got this house, we had no idea what it was. It was as much a mystery to us. It was just a kind of a ramshackle old farmhouse-looking house that had 2 kitchens, and that was what I needed to buy. And so we picked it up about a couple years after we got married and moved into it. And the story would have ended there, except for we discovered through Denise Marquardt its history. She was sitting out back at the fire pit. You know, we have a big fire. We say, everybody come on over. And she's looking at the back of the house, and she says, that house has been in my backyard my entire life. And really? She says, yes, the parsonage. And so I went to the church, the Ferry Memorial Church, and they assured me no, that house was destroyed. A week later, Pastor Claver contacted me, and he said, I was mistaken. That house and its neighbor house, the Mason house right there, they were neighbors over on Old Channel, and they're neighbors here today. They were moved on Easter Sunday, 1981, sold for the proverbial dollar, and essentially sold to a landlord that, and they just got forgotten. And the story picks up with, well, I don't know, do we go to your meeting with the mayor?
Well, there's a story of a cannon that was given to the city, and there's variable reasons or ways that it got there, but it was given to the city, and it sat in front of the school for years and years, and then they built the World War I obelisk, and it sat next to the obelisk, the way we understand.
Why was it given to the city?
Okay. First I was trying to get to the point of the cannon, and we are looking for a picture of the cannon. You were talking about, Tommy, you were talking about earlier about pictures. If anybody has a picture of this cannon in front of the school or anywhere, we would love to get a picture of it. The cannon, the reason the cannon was given to the city, or one of the Lipkas grabbed onto it and brought it back from the war, I'm not sure, but the Noah Ferry gathered up 86 men, the way we understand it, 86 men, and they went and fought in the Civil War. They were the Michigan 5th Cavalry. There was a few other people thrown in with them, and they were under Colonel Custer at the time, and they fought a valiant effort. Colonel Custer had placed them on a fence line and said, don't let anyone through. And they were one of the few companies to have repeating arms. And they did a valiant effort. There's a letter from Colonel Custer stating what a valiant effort that the Michigan 5th did. And therefore, they were given the city was given a cannon. But that's a story we like to hear anyway. Of course, most of the streets in Montague are named after, of course, local people, but a lot of them were people that were in the Civil War and lost their lives. Noah lost his life there.
At Gettysburg.
Outside of Gettysburg, yeah. And anyway, so I was meeting with the mayor about looking for this cannon in White Lake, because that was the story that we had gotten. And I met Henry, it was Henry Rossler at the time, and we met down at the Book Nook. Well, Valerie was working at the Book Nook, helping out a friend that owned it, and that's where we met. And one thing led to another. I kept coming in for coffee, and she decided that I was good enough to marry, so. Okay.
Yeah, so I wanted him to tell that story because it was the ferries that actually brought us together, and we end up living in the Ferry Memorial's parsonage completely by accident. And so it's kind of a fun come around. I had started cooking classes in suburbia Whitehall, a little 70s split-level ranch, and every time I had the cooking class, I had to gut my kitchen, put all the student stuff in, and run the class, clean the kitchen, put my stuff back, and it really got old after an article was printed in the Chicago Sun-Times about what I do. I started getting really a lot of customers. And so we started looking for the house with 2 kitchens, and that's where we landed here. So we brought the cooking school with us, and we proceeded to just essentially uncover the house. The old wood floors, you'll all get a tour. The old wood floors are original to the house, and we tried to retain as much as we could, or repurpose it in the house if we could. So you'll enjoy seeing it. But in 2012, we decided, no, it's 2011, we decided we were going to open a bed and breakfast. All 6 daughters had moved out, and they were threatening to move back in. So, so we had to say, sorry, your beds are taken. So we went to the city, and we really thought about what to name the house now that we knew the identity of it. You know, there's always the temptation to name something after the Civil War hero. But I just really felt this kinship with Amanda White Ferry. I'd read by that time extensively her history from, I believe, Massachusetts. Is that correct, Dave? Massachusetts? Yes. From Massachusetts to the Mackinac Island to Grand Haven, where they settled there for a while. And then Noah, of course, skipping Muskegon Lake because the Hackley and Humes had that. And he settled here and started lumbering here on White Lake. And that's what took him off. And when he died, she died just, I want to say about 7 years later, interestingly, on December 30th, the same day her husband died, just I think 1 year later or so, one or 3 years later. It's in your, I made a little handout for you. The facts are in here. I'm just trying to remember them. But anyway, she just seemed to have a really sad life, and she wanted a more elegant one than perhaps she had in Lumbertown and on Mackinac Island settling the heathens. So I think she was really attached to Noah. She left that bequest, and I know of no other bequest for any other children other than Noah. And so I just felt, okay, this is Amanda's bequest. This exists because Amanda was that tied to her son. And so after she died, the brother Edward Ferry, who is another story entirely and really interesting, went to the congregation and said, I really don't think you guys are capable of the church my mother is envisioning. Now this was Lumbertown. This was rough. And he said, here's the deal. You show up, go to work, George Dowling will architect, we'll fund the materials, but you have to build the parsonage. And once it's done to our satisfaction, we know you're committed to the kind of church my mother wanted to build. And so this parsonage was built by the parishioners in order to earn their church. So it was finished by sometime in 1873. I would want to say 72, but I'm not positive because the church was finished by 74, and that had to have taken some time, but we just don't have specific dates. So this was the bargaining point. They earned their church by building the house, and I just think that's a pretty interesting little piece of information as well. Anything to add to that?
Well, you're doing great.
Okay. And so that's the name, Amanda's Bequest. And we've had such fun building it. The premise is old, not necessarily turn of the century, Midwestern farm values, foods, lifestyle, laid back. Our guests, they get eggs, everything. I try to grow what we eat. If I don't, I try to know where I'm getting it. It's very much hearty farm to fork fare here, and it's kind of just more of a relaxed atmosphere than from traditionally high Victorians, and you'll get that idea. It's filled with most of our family histories as well, pieces from our history, and I don't know, it's just been wonderful. I put up there we've had guests from 25 other countries other than the U.S., and that's in just. We opened the first summer in 2012 in April, and our very first guests were from England. And so it's been 2 full years, and we're just halfway through the third year. And it's Lithuania and Australia last weekend. So it's really kind of fun that they're looking for this kind of historical, but the farm feel, the true American way of life back before we kind of moved into the cities and went to McDonald's. So that's kind of the premise of it. Tomorrow morning, the menu is we're starting it out with fruit and my homemade toast, home churned butter, homemade preserves. And the next plate will be some French toast with a fruit sauce that I've made. And there'll also be, of course, the kids' eggs and some bacon. And I always add a pickled item, whether it's my pickled beets or pickled asparagus. So it's the full traditional, like Saturday morning always includes biscuits and gravy. This isn't Mediterranean. This is traditional American breakfast.
Sunday morning always starts with pie.
Yes, always pie. Life is short. So, and of course the cooking school is still going on, and that's just been growing too, to the point where we're probably gonna have to hire. But we teach baking pastries using the lard and the butter. Of course, if somebody's vegetarian, we switch that up a little bit. But this is cooking from scratch. You know, you're actually starting with flour and, you know, all of the ingredients. You're not opening a box of Pillsbury and dumping a can of Thank You brand in it. We're teaching people just actually how easy it is to make it from scratch with a little bit of planning or the right tools. Canning is big. The very first class we had here was a father. He called me up and he said, I have 3 daughters and they need to get married. And I told him I could relate. But he said, what can you teach them that's going to snag them the right guy? And I said, well, what do they like to do? What's your family style? So they ended up coming on December 30th in 12, and we did it in the modern kitchen that was in there when we first moved in. And they brought their own venison, and I taught them how to process it and can it. And they made apple pies. And I'll be happy to tell you one of the daughters was married within 9 months. Anyone who can can venison is going to snag a hunter. They can choose to have what I call a farm supper. And it's, again, a traditional, it might be stew and, you know, just a very comfort food meal. They can choose to sit down and, because, you know, the best memories happen around the table. So after they've made their bread and jam or, you know, canned tomatoes, they sit down and they just, whether they're friends or family, or sometimes it's date night for a couple of couples, they just relax, and this is not a rush. It's a really memorable time.
Now, where do you advertise?
I do a lot of social media. Both Bygone Basics and Amanda's Bequest have Facebook pages. I have websites also for both of them, and they're easily searchable if you're looking for a cooking school or a bed and breakfast in the area. I guess I don't typically pay for any local advertising. We're doing this on a budget. This isn't the Lewis House. We are really trying to do this based on what our means are. I'm fairly adept at internet use and getting the word out there. It's just it's probably just recently that the local community has actually discovered that we're here. Nancy Rushke could probably speak to that, but yeah, we've been here, but we've been bringing people from out of town here, and just this winter, I did some classes through the community ed, and I had so many people come through. I didn't know you were here. So I guess that would probably be the only piece of local advertising I've done. I do make I make our own soaps and candles, but also I run classes along those lines, and pretty much any of that the older farm family skills, like raising chickens. I'll run a class. I have people who come and stay here just to learn how to have a backyard flock, or maybe how to ferment sauerkraut. We're also doing cheese making classes, so it's branched out widely. We grew up very poor and on a farm up near Silver Lake, and this was my lifestyle. We did not make cheese. I have since I've been able to transfer my knowledge of fermenting and other, sourdough starters into cheese, the enzyme processes of cheese making. So a lot of it I can transfer and study up and learn how to do it myself, or I will go and take courses and figure out specific things. But for the most part, it's how I grew up.
Like mother, grandmother, that sort of
Yeah,
thing?
very traditional. The sauerkraut kit that's in the kitchen, that's been in my family since they came from my dad's family since they came from Germany. And that just gets out every year and we make sauerkraut. We didn't last year. The deer ate all the cabbage. Anybody do anything about the deer problem out here?
I said they got everything.
Can them, yeah. I need somebody to hunt them because you can't do that here.
Valerie's being a little modest though. She did go to Michigan State,
Yeah.
took the canning processing.
I had to be licensed in
Yeah.
order to teach these things, and so I had
Yeah.
to go to school to do that.
Right. So it's not just a whim and, that maybe is right because mom did it. I mean, she really does know what she's doing.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, John. I've had people ask me about the cannon. What's the status on the cannon? You brought it up a few minutes ago. Last
Yeah,
time I heard you talked about the cannon.
yeah.
Maybe you could explain to people your process, what you've been doing with that.
Well, yeah.
Haven't found it yet.
We haven't found it yet. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's been 7 years going on. The story, if everybody's heard the story or not, maybe I'll touch on that real quick. That a couple of kids, high school, and the cannon was out, out front, and gag. We'll just grab it, wheel it across the street, and throw it down the gully where Park Street crosses now. Crosses that gully. Well, that wasn't there, and they just pushed it down the gully. Well, the principal, Townsend, yes, found out who did it, and we're not sure. There's some stories about that too. We won't go there. Somehow he found out who did it, and he made these two kids drag this cannon back up. Well, of course they're mad they got caught, and mad that they had to do it. So graduation comes, and they're going to put the cannon where it can't be found. And of course, back then, in the late 20s, early 30s, the big ships were still coming in here. They worked their way down the lake, the Whitehall side. They come around to the Goodrich dock, and they park there for the night. So that dock was still in use, and there's photographs of that dock and a couple of buildings there. And there, next to one of those buildings, there is a long ramp that went the entire length of that building, probably 30 foot anyway, just a gradual ramp up to the dock. So it's feasible that a couple kids and maybe an extra one or two, but could have wheeled this up and dumped it in the lake. So in any case, they kept quiet. They did have their 8-year-old brother with them at the time, and they kept it all quiet. Well, finally one of the guys passed away, then the next, and now at the funeral, the 8-year-old brother, now 80, tells the story of the cannon. And a guy, rest is history, guy got a hold of me and my buddy Greg Dahl, and we've been searching for it ever since. We had Ralph Wilbanks. He does a lot of the research for Clive Cussler, the book writer. Ralph, I ran into him down at a seminar in Holland, and I had him come up with a magnetometer. He says, well, I can't tell you it's a cannon, but there's a big piece of metal there. And so we've been trying, but it's been elusive. I don't know how it can move, but what used to be 20-some feet deep is now 8 feet. And it's tough to be probing and trying to find that. I ran across another guy that had a ground-penetrating sonar. Well, that sounds good, but it doesn't work on water. But it works on ice. So we had him come up here in the winter, and we covered the area, and he found a target at 14 feet deep and 18 feet deep. And it was metal, according to his unit. And so we cut a hole in the ice, dropped a buoy down, and You know, we went out there that year and we probing and can't find it. So we sunk a big piece of PVC pipe down in that immediate area. Well, we had them back up this winter. The ice was so thick and so much air bubbles, he couldn't read the bottom anywhere once he got 2 foot from shore. It was just, so that was a bust. But we haven't given up. It's just a slow process.
What will you do with the cannon when you find it?
Well, this was Henry's wish to find. You know, Henry Rossler wanted this cannon. He wanted it found, wanted it back on display, and that's exactly what I would want done with it. You know, it would take some restoration. You know, the hopes we could get one of the colleges involved and have them take it over as a project to restore it. But I would like to see it back, you know, at one of the parks.
Or our
You know,
front yard.
yeah, or our front yard. Yeah. But you know, back next to the obelisk, you know, or maybe between. I mean, it was people from this area that went and fought in the Civil War. Maybe the park, you know, down there by the boat launch, you know, by the river across from Doug and
What
Suds.
about Heritage Landing? The one that the county park is putting in?
Oh, Hilt's Landing.
Hilt's Landing.
Hilt's
Hilt's
Landing.
Landing.
Gotta find it first.
Yeah, gotta
Yeah,
find
yeah,
it.
I gotta find it first. It has to get restored. There's a lot of questions. So.
All right, we're going to start doing some tours so our guests can get back in their rooms. There's a in-depth photo album open on the deck over there with a lot of before and after pictures. They're not really after. I didn't take any because you're going to see it yourself. There's the handout. It has all of the information about the significant dates of the house, as well as some photographs. It is our intent to put the gingerbread and the front porch back on, and we'll just continue to work on it. And I ask if anyone has any photographs of the interior of this house. I just would love it. I cannot find a single one. Yes?
Did you want me to say a few things?
Yeah, if you have some. Yeah, I'm just wrapping it up myself.
Denise, who was the gal
Miriam.
Miriam. What was her last name?
Gibbs.
Gibbs.
Miriam Gibbs was married in our parlor back in probably the 30s.
Miriam Margaret.
Yes,
Married out of Gibbs.
so that was kind of fun.
97 now, lives over the hill.
And she was able to, about 2 summers ago, she came and had tea, and she walks to this corner of the parlor, and she says, I was married right here. It was so sweet.
We had the pastor.
Oh, yeah.
Stop.
Stopker, the very last pastor that lived in the manse when it was a manse. Stoker, yeah. He and his wife showed up last summer, just knocked on the door,
Yep.
took a tour, and all their stories of hobos and the straw mattress that had 2 curves that wouldn't have been that way if it had been his mattress. It was just a hoot.
So you're gonna make the bread too, or just the zucchini?
Zucchini bread, zucchini muffins, fried zucchini.
I make a vegetable lasagna with zucchini.
Oh, that's good. So this is what we call our heritage kitchen.
This is nice. I love this stove.
Yes, it's 100 years old, and we still use it almost every day.
Wow.
It is a lot of our canning goes on there, and like the cast iron pans back there, and those are our breakfast cookers with it. That's the kit.
No boy.
And I can everything, and
That's nice.
we're licensed. It's a licensed food prep kitchen, so we have to have certain modern things like the hand washing station. So it's a kind of a blend of old and new. And I use the churns.
Do you?
Yeah, these are decor. I use this stuff. And this is my sauerkraut kit. This is the pounder. You get your head of cabbage, put it in here, and you just like a great big mandolin. It's part of the process of making sauerkraut, of course, is the cabbage shredding, and then you ferment it here in the crock. And this is what we call our scullery. It's the behind the scenes, dirty work.
That's nice.
Put the tin ceiling in.
That's neat. I
Thought
like that.
was
Yeah.
a touch. I'd kind of like to do it to the rest of the kitchen, but it's a little price prohibitive.
Yeah.
This is our parlor. It's got an 1860 parlor stove in it that is original, but we put an electric insert into it because no candles, no fire, and no wood timber home. The sofa is filled with goose down. You gotta sit down on that. It is the most wonderful sofa. cover clock was handmade, including all of its works, by a farmer in mid-Michigan who was born in 1899.
Wow.
And this was one of his early works.
Did you guys buy it or was
We
it
we
here?
bought it. We bought it. Yep. It's the most perfect addition to our bed and breakfast because it's got a very low rung. And it was made by a farmer. And
Look at player piano.
Yeah? Does it work?
my mother, its bellows have given out. We paid
Yeah, I have one that-
Keel's piano service to come and fix it. And to do so. He wants to put an electric pump in it. And I said, no, I don't think so. We may in the future, but not right now. That's John's dad's accordion.
Yeah, we have one of those too.
This is the most tricked out accordion you've ever seen.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that something?
Is that his name?
Yeah, his dad went by Curly, but his name was Clarence.
That's pretty.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's got to be about 50 pounds.
Wow.
Those are John's relatives.
Okay.
That's his great-grandparents on the wall. His grandmother and his father are in the little picture. And the charcoal drawing over here are my grandmother and her husband.
Okay.
I do make a mean pie. This was originally the pastor's house. And I don't tell my bed and breakfast guests that very often because it's just kind of hard to relax in a pastor's office. It's best behavior. But the crazy quilt is actually a full-size bed quilt. And I had John McGarry look at it, and it is just this phenomenal example. He's never seen anything like it, of intricate stitchery, and it was made by Florence Ewell Atkins, who traveled the United States with Susan B. Anthony, getting women the right to vote and establishing temperance. And that was her childhood desk. That's right behind you. The family stayed here our first year. I'm going to show you how this works. And they were so taken with how we say we're not a museum. We want you to live and touch, and that they donated these. So that's we renamed the room for. But this was her. I mean, look at this. This is an educational point about the vanishing point. And look at the parlor. That's the example. It's about 1850, we figure.
Wow.
So, and cut the arch off so callously so that he could just lay boards on top of all of the doorways.
What he called was a hung ceiling.
Yeah. And so that was just a really sad thing. We have yet to restore this spot, and we're biding our time to do it right.
Yeah.
Come a long way. This wood here in the hallway is what is holding our house together. These are the planks in our walls and the 2x4s. This was the original wiring that was put in about 1920. Guests can book a dinner when I'm not busy. I kind of have to approve it. And often it's a period dinner out of some period in history. And this one is 1901 out of the White House.
Okay.
And so a lot of our guests will get a state dinner. And it's just really awesome in 1901 what they fed people. All right.
One-way street. Yeah.
What'd you think, Gordon? Yeah, it does. It is a lot.
And they started croquet, and they started badminton. We got some
So
good-
this is more typically a family stay, like if a mother, son are traveling together. A lot of times we have families come through and they're going to Camp Owassipee and they're dropping their kids off. So they stay here first and then drop the kids off and then stay.
Yeah, that's nice.
And so that's what this room is. It's a great little family stay, and it's a nod towards the lumbering era, the shipping. And so it was supposed to be my 1950s room, but John made it a ship room. And I actually had to make him not glue things to the ceiling like it was a shipwreck. You know, the table and chairs.
Oh, he had a vision of like the
An
the
upside
mystery spot
down,
in the Upper
an
Peninsula.
upside down ship. It's like, no, John, this is a place people need to relax. You're not putting a table and chair on my ceiling.
Right.
Table.
And so this is actually part of the house as well, this table. And these are some of the planks from the house. And we have, he used the lath and plaster to make the cargo hatches, not the plaster, the lath, to make the hatches from
That's a
the
good
old walls.
idea.
Yeah, he tried to repurpose as much as possible.
That's what we do. The show must go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a doozy this year. Oh my goodness. We finally got it figured out. We guess we're coming to go cross-country skiing, but you know, by the time we bought all the skis and realized they would come and do that, it was, you know, May.
You're ready for another sign.
Yeah, that's right. And they're in the photo album downstairs. It's shag carpeting, 70s paneling, and just, this has come. Yes, he had to have that.
Yeah.
We've changed the room over the years, but the bed got bigger and moved from over there to over there. And we put in a seating area and a fireplace, and it's our nod to the farm porch where people were learning it was unhealthy to sleep in the house. They really didn't know why back in the turn of 1900s it was unhealthy, but they were getting consumption and, you know, all the lung diseases, yeah. And the doctors were learning that they were healthier if they slept either wide open windows or out on the porch. And they also found they were healthier if they had a little bit of happy time, little leisure, and that's where badminton and croquet were all developed. And so when I did a 20s room, I didn't really want to do flappers, and you know, the Great Depression would have been awesome, right?
But depressing.
Yeah, just a little bit. So I decided to go for a farm porch because that's kind of our I don't know what you call our theme. Snag them as I get ideas. I just repurpose them. This is
And
just
that's
wall
the
art.
same finish as
Yeah.
the seat of the chair, the
So,
pattern.
did you and John know that you were both so passionate about
No,
creating
no,
when you
this-
met each other?
We were a perfect firestorm of a match when it came to putting together a bed and breakfast, actually, because he's so creative in his way and I'm creative in a different way. But we communicate that very well to each other, and then we have ideas. Oh yes, and you know.
Yeah, okay.
And then you
know.
negotiate
Yeah,
what's really
yeah.
realistic.
Yeah, nothing on the ceiling that's upside down. If you could only have seen it when we first saw it and we were looking at it to buy it. We couldn't, in fact, the bank wouldn't even allow it to be sold unless we came in and did an awful lot of renovation. There was a lot of exposed,
So it was like below code,
yes, the
Got it.
bank would not cover it.
sub-code,
The
and they
family,
don't want to support
Yeah.
a loan on something that's sub-code.
the
Yeah.
family had been caught in some criminal activity and had left town in the middle of the night. They were in Florida somewhere. So they lost it to, you know, the bank. And no one else was gonna fix it up. And so I spent, I don't know how many hours in a house I didn't own, painting, yeah, in
Oh
order to
my
be able to
goodness,
buy
yeah,
it.
think about that.
Yeah, that
Wow.
was a huge leap of faith. In order to be able to buy it, I had to paint, we had to put banisters up, we had to cover
And that's
the
before you ever
exposed
knew it was the
electricity. Yeah, we had no
manse,
idea.
before
We
you
just
knew
loved
the
house.
history of it.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was a huge leap. We could have lost, you know, the bank might have still said no.
oh my God.
Or the, you know, whatever. In the old days, when a big sliver came up out of the floor, they just tacked ropes in it. And if a knot came out of the floor, they tacked bottle caps into it.
Oh, okay.
See that? They just fixed them that way. So there's ropes and bottle caps in the floor. You don't replace your floor, you fix it.
Yeah.
What is this you call?
It is a Hoosier cabinet. They were built, oh gosh, in Indiana, of course. When women started becoming consumers, they were creating these baker's cabinets. And they became all the rage. I can't give you that era, but I want to say 1910-ish or so, they became the rage. And they would store flowers and sugars in the bins until they realized the weevils. And then they stopped doing that, and they ripped them all out. But this one still has it.
So I found this treasure of a book here. It's Amanda White Ferry, the daughter, who wrote it, doing family history. This book I found in the Montague High School library, hidden away, and it's written by Amanda White Ferry Jr., the daughter of the Ferry family, the older sister of Noah. And she did family history, and unfortunately, she tends to focus primarily on the men of the family, and so there's not a lot about Amanda White Ferry, but there are a few things I just share with you real briefly. She was preceded William Montague Ferry preceded her in death by 3 years in 1867. In his will, he left $12,500 toward paying the pastor half the salary of $600 per year of the First Presbyterian Church at Montague. Now you might wonder where they were meeting if there was no building. Well, they were meeting above the Burroughs hardware store in Montague at that time. So $12,500, which was going to be $600 per year for 25 years. He set that aside for the salary of the pastor. 3 years later, Amanda passes away, and she leaves $1,500 toward the permanent sanctuary to be built to honor Noah, her son who died at Gettysburg. Her son Edward, who executed the estate, increased the amount to $12,000 along with the promise from the church that they would build the manse, the parsonage here. In 1871, the Burroughs hardware store burned to the ground, so the church lost their home. 3 years later, the sanctuary was completed, as they mentioned. And when the sanctuary was dedicated, Edward, the son Edward, Noah's younger brother, and his wife Jeanette came up from Grand Haven and sat in the back of the church during the dedication of the church. A little bit more about Amanda. She met William Montague Ferry in Massachusetts. William was going to Union Theological Seminary, and Amanda's father, Thomas White, was the chairman of the Board of Foreign Missions. And William took an interest in missions. He had done a summer internship in what he called the slums of New York City doing mission work, and decided he had a call to mission. So when he came back to Massachusetts for a short break, he interviewed with the Board of Foreign Missions, and the president at that time, or chairman, was Thomas White, and he introduced William to his daughter Amanda, and that's where their relationship begins. William was one of 5 men graduating from seminary with an interest in missions, and they were all destined to go to Israel to do missions, which apparently at that time was a fairly comfortable placement in the minds of the 5 gentlemen planning to go. But then a call came for someone to go to Mackinac Island, and they interviewed all 5, and the first 4 all turned it down, and that left William. And he said yes, which really grieved Amanda's parents. They were very upset that their daughter was marrying William and going to the savages of the Northwest, as they put it. Amanda taught, well, first of all, just so you know, William went to Mackinac Island in 1822 to get the mission started. They started by building the dormitory for the Métis children. The Métis would be typically children with a father who was in the fur trade and a mother who was a Native American. Okay, and these were the children in need of schooling and housing. He returned in 1823, married Amanda, and then they traveled by Erie Canal to Mackinac Island. Robert and Elizabeth Stewart met them in Detroit, and he, of course, was famous in the fur trade. And it was a bit of a relief to Amanda that Elizabeth met them there, because she was a woman of, as the daughter wrote, impressive in manner and intellect, in keeping with the women of New England society. So she was glad that Emma Stewart was there to meet her and take her to the island, because that gave her some comfort that she wouldn't be in the wilderness alone. She taught at the dormitory school, and she brought teachers from Massachusetts with her. The goal of the mission was the Americanization of the children through traditional education, Bible teaching, and agriculture. What they didn't realize, but they learned pretty quickly, is that agriculture wasn't going to catch on with fur traders. So they gave up the agriculture portion pretty quickly. She struggled with island life. She wrote of how she visited a wigwam that did not have one chair on which to sit, and the floor was entirely of dirt. And the horrible conditions. She described how the fur trade gatherings were loud with drunkenness and frivolities. Her son, William Jr., wrote that his mother gobbled up any piece of news she could read every morning before chores began. She was always looking for news outside the island, the wider world. She gave birth to 5 children on the island: William, Thomas, Amanda, Noah, and Hannah. And then 2 more children, Edward and Mary, were born in Grand Haven. So they did move to Grand Haven eventually. William gave up the ministry on the island. There's some speculations as to why. He may have been sick. There was some rivalry between the Presbyterian mission and the Catholic mission, some conflicts that may have caused the end of the Presbyterian mission. There was some debate on the Board of Foreign Missions about funding the mission, so we're not sure why they left, but they did. Another little interesting thing about Amanda Jr. is that early on the island, the daughter, Amanda Jr., she was retrieved from the island by her Aunt Hannah and brought to Massachusetts to be raised. She was quite sickly as an infant, which is why I thought they probably brought her back to Massachusetts to be raised, and she wasn't reunited with her parents until age 19 in Grand Haven, so grew up with her grandparents. But I thought you might be interested in this. The other daughter, Hannah, that was born in Grand Haven, she also was picked up as a toddler from Grand Haven and raised in Massachusetts and brought back at the age of 19. So maybe it was more about wanting them trained in the common school setting of the New England. They served on the island until 1834, and then they went to Grand Haven. I won't go on too much more, but I just wanted to let you know that the children went into a wide variety of different areas. I can't get into that right now, but Amanda White, in here, the daughter, Amanda White Jr., she traces the family on both sides going back to the 1300s. So there's plenty of history here to be dug into. And I'm hoping to type this up, and I'll give a copy. This book is kind of garbled, so I have to clean it up and type it up, and then I'll print it and give it to the museum. So, yeah.
In Grand Haven today, there is a house just off of Sheldon Street that has etched in the door, Senator Ferry's home. Is
Yes.
this the same family? Did he go on to be a senator?
One of the sons, yes, Thomas, was a senator.
Okay.
And he lived with his aunt Mary. Amanda's sister came up from Massachusetts and taught in Grand Haven.
Okay.
And they resided together.
Home.
Yes. And Mary, there's a Mary White Elementary School in Grand Haven named after her. Yes.
Yes.
And
Okay.
Thomas and she lived there.
Okay.
We want to say thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. John and Valerie, we say thank you again. These are not Valerie's cookies either up here, unfortunately.
Thank you, everyone.